Seva from Alicante. I can just. Okay, so I'm giving you a microphone.
Okay, thank you.
So Victor is going to coordinate, and then I'm also going to ask a couple of developers to come in front. But this is going to be a crossfire discussion because we have so many developers in the room. The scope of this session is ask us anything, even if you are a developer or a user, not only about the code, but also organization of the project, as well as documentation, what we should do in the future. Not document, okay. So we have all here. I don't know if you want to come in front or if you want to stay there. But then one of the persons that helped with the project a lot, it was a bit quiet over the past several years, but I'm very glad he is back. Henning, without Henning, at some point the project would have been hard to survive because he helped us in some delicate situation. Henning, please come here. Not with the name, but with the trademark. The name was from Klaus. Then we have Federico, which last time I was working for Orange. I haven't checked now, but he did a lot of work for the mobile side of Kamailio, so using Kamailio on mobile networks. In the past, he did also 2 presentations that I think it's rock solid, so he doesn't have any new challenging to show, but if you need to ask anything about Kamailio on mobile or using it together with the mobile devices and so on, he's the right guy. Then who else I could come with a developer? We have some of them that are a bit shy and are staying in the back. I was trying to catch, I'm standing up, so I can maybe get Julian, you want to come? Because he has also a lightning talk later, but anyhow. I was hoping that the Zipwise guys made it, but probably they're a bit late with the, I don't need that chair, but it's okay. I'm gonna stand up because RTP engine got quite, Henning, it's okay, it's okay. RTP engine got quite some very interesting feature lately, and I was hoping to get the guys, because I have some questions. Okay, so we have, again, a lot of developers in the room, so whatever you like to, we are gonna, you cannot run away. Okay, so maybe first let's have an introduction shortly, saying the name again, I mentioned it, but what you are doing currently, an area of interest for Kamailio.
Okay, so hi everyone. So my name is Julien Chavanton. I worked in Orange, in fact, with Federico and a few others, Giacomo, and on the Libon project for 4 years. And now I'm working for FlowRoute in Seattle. So now I'm focusing on Kamailio more than media in the past few years. So I was lucky enough to be part of this community and contributed a few things. And later today I will show some work I have done on the dispatcher module to monitor gateways and a new load balancing algorithm. So yeah, thanks.
Cool. Ole Johansson. I've been around for many years. I've been doing all the telephony stuff. Recently, I've been using SIP for radio broadcast, live radio broadcast, as well as alarm and door entry systems. There's a lot of new things coming to the SIP world, even though many of us believe it's an old technology.
Henning Westerholt. I'm since 2007 with the project. I would say, I started also as a developer, then got more and more involved in the organizational parts of the project. And currently I would say I'm doing like normal open source development, what a lot of people are doing here in the project, and also I'm focused in recently a bit on the security processes, security research regarding Kamailio, and I will also present tomorrow about that.
So hello, I'm Victor, and well, Daniel already talked who I am and what I'm doing. So I'm most of the Debian part of the project, and did a lot of different things in different modules. So hello.
Hello, I'm Federico, and yeah, I work with this project since now many years, and that's it.
Okay. So. No.
Hello, hello. Hey, I'm Alex Belishov, based in the Atlanta, U.S. area, and we do a lot of Kamailio consultancy for about over 10 years now, actually, and also some SIP and Kamailio training, and have a class 4 routing product, and are very involved in the Kamailio community, and try to provide advocacy and training, and generally kind of contribute to the health of the ecosystem, especially in the North American market.
Okay. So questions. Nothing. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I have the microphones here for questions, and maybe I'm starting to warm up with the first question and the people think about. And again, the answer doesn't have to come from these guys. They have to come from also other guys from the audience, including the answers, not only, because we'll have also the idea is to interact between us and said.
Hi, I think my question would be quite. You've been asked by a million times, but let me ask again. The thing that I'm using Kamailio, not like in a high expertise level or so, and mainly I'm installing Kamailio on small VoIP services and so on. So my question about is it any plans to build a B2B module, including the RTP engine as well? So
No.
okay.
Okay, I think I'm gonna take it this one because somehow.
No.
Yeah, no, but no, up to some level. Watch out. So now this B2B UA has a lousy definition, is not clear. But if you look at some of the features that we offer with a couple of modules, we are there to some extent. We'll never have, or never say never, right? But in short term, there is no plan, at least from the core developers. I interact more with them working on this kind of feature. But if you look for topology hiding, which we have two options now. We have Topo, which stands for topology hiding, and Topos, which is kind of topology stripping. The topology hiding is masking the IP addresses, which is probably what you want to hide in this case, by encrypting them in a way or another, but still present in some special tokens as part of the message. That's very fast, so it gives you more like privacy in the way of, I don't know, the source IP or the original IP of the sender and so on. Everything is encrypted, but still you could see, because we have some headers that we mask and we replace, but they are still there. Okay, this call went through 5 hops. So a bit of discovering the topology is possible, but you don't know the IP addresses. You know only from your side to the SIP server. What's beyond the SIP server, you don't see the IP addresses in clear. There are only some static IP address put there, could be the loopback address. This is the one that it's there and known to work very well and is very scalable in the way that we don't keep any state on the server that you need to replicate in case of high availability and so on. The new one in the group, it's called Topos, which again stands for topology stripping, and that really looks like a back-to-back user agent, because it strips all the headers. What goes out from Kamailio has a single via, like being the first hop in the call. So you really see 2 legs, more or less, in terms of, you don't see any information about how many hops are behind the SIP server. You see only from the SIP server towards you. Could be because you run a proxy and so on. So this gives a look like a back-to-back user agent. However, we don't change the call ID at this moment, and something that it's not added there or was not implemented yet, it's spirals. So if you want to do a spiral, this it's not yet implemented. Carsten was also interesting and probably will kind of work soon on that feature. Otherwise, this looks like a back-to-back user agent from the point of view of signaling. But then a back-to-back user agent has more feature. Like if you want to be like a client initiating a new call, answering, and you know, acting as a phone, probably that's not gonna be soon there. Was somehow solving or answering a bit of your...
Yeah, also...
but then, okay, my question to you would be, what other feature you would need from this back-to-back user agent?
Daniel, we have a few comments from up here. I think Alex was starting. And
I was just going to say that, I mean, existentially, the very core of Kamailio is built as a proxy. So one does not easily parlay one into the other. It's kind of like if you have a bottle of milk and you come up to the cow and you try to put it back in the cow. It's just not cosmologically possible.
Well, after having spent more than 10 years in the source code on back-to-back UA, I'm happy to be out. Came up alive. There are a few personal comments first and then a more official comment. Personally, I say that many requirements for a back-to-back UA come from a broken network or a lack of security. You want to hide stuff. Security by obscurity is seldom a good thing. And you're still using UDP, so the zip headers and the new WebRTC STPs is swallowing over. You get UDP fragmentation. Go to TLS TCP, and you don't need that. So there's a lot of reasons why Kamailio is not today a back-to-back user agent. From the project standpoint, every morning when I wake up, I see new things coming. We are a very open project, so if someone comes forward and writes a back-to-back user module that fits into the Kamailio architecture, we already have a UAC, a user agent client. Well, and if that person wants to maintain it and keep the code without involving the rest of us and making us responsible for maintaining that code, I don't think the project would say no. We're very open. We even have competing modules. So there's no, I would say, core strategy. It's more like IETF. If someone wants to go ahead and do the work and keep maintaining it, let's go ahead. But personally, I don't see the need. There are plenty of back-to-back user agents, and they're all... that's another discussion for beers later.
Okay, thank you, Ole. You want to add something? Or other questions here?
We have a question here. Right. Okay. You had one there.
So hi, I have a dispatcher module question. Okay, we are running Kamailio in a containerized environment, which is very mutational. Oh, sorry. No? Okay, now good. Okay, and we need the dispatchers to be reloaded and refreshed with new ones. And the problem now is that we cannot add a single dispatcher without reloading the dispatchers and losing the paths. So do you plan on implementing something to just add a single dispatcher and
so like
have
adding
the paths preserved?
A new group, or what you mean, adding a dispatcher?
No, just a single dispatcher. So if I have like a proxy layer and then having multiple dispatchers down, like a routing layer, when I have a new node,
destination,
yes,
in a
new
group.
destination, I need to reload all dispatchers in order to have this new one added, and then I'm losing all the paths that I need to have a workaround with the shared table.
Is your concern that you're losing state?
Yeah, which state are you
Yes.
losing in this case that you would like to keep? When you reload, you lose some state that you would like to keep, right?
The
active,
path.
the probing state, or
The path.
path?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know this state. In fact, maybe I'm
The
missing-
path for registration, because again, it's
The path to the dispatcher.
so I'm not getting.
Maybe, doesn't ring a bell for me. I don't know.
So okay, let's make
Dangerous demo.
kind of.
Okay.
Let's try to make a picture like in our memory. So we have the user, and then sends to this is the dispatcher or not?
Yes, this is the proxy.
No, we
Okay.
have
the
the phone.
Kamailio
The
node
phone.
that has. Okay.
Phone sends
Goes
to
to Kamailio.
which is the dispatcher or not?
No.
This is like an edge proxy. Does
Yes, an edge
forwarding.
proxy. Okay. Then I have the dispatchers down beneath.
You
the
have a couple
Kamailio.
of Kamailios.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
I'm having a new one. Okay.
Okay.
I would like to just add it and not have all the dispatchers
Okay.
reloaded.
So you basically want RPC commands that
Yes.
to manipulate a dispatcher set. So you can add destinations, remove destination, add attributes, remove attributes.
Yes. Exactly.
That's doable, but you will break some of the database synchronization because if you reload, that will go. So maybe one should look at saving to database as well.
Okay.
It's just code. Go write it or
Well,
pay
but-
a developer to write it.
But
But
can
I think that would be a good addition to be able to in-memory manipulate destinations and their
Yes,
states.
But can I ask why you want this?
Well, because we have a really, as I told you, mutable architecture, and reloading every time the dispatchers and not being able to add a single one, and then preserving the paths in the shared table, it's just
But what exactly is breaking when you reload?
I lose the paths.
That's what I don't understand. What is the path?
Packet flows from cast.
How are you? But that belongs to the transaction. Yeah, exactly. How are you using the dispatcher? What do you mean with path?
The transaction, do you mean the zip transaction or the zip dialog state?
Zip dialog state.
Okay, so you have the dispatchers are also operating in a dialog module,
Yes.
transaction layer module. Okay, then of
Yes.
course you will losing some
Yes,
state. Okay,
absolutely.
I mean you could, I mean simply to split
So-
these two instances to different, yeah. You could run the dispatcher stateless and then the transaction layer, dialog layer on a separate machine, separate Docker container or whatever. This would be an easy solution.
Yeah, we'll have to think because again, I'm like main author for dispatcher and I'm not sure I got all, but adding some comments to manage the information in memory should
I think that the
be
problem
not
is
that
another.
complex. So adding, removing from memory, as all I said, it's C code and I don't expect to be something complex. So maybe you can make a feature request on the mailing, on the GitHub, explaining a bit more, but dispatcher is rather simple and adding, removing from its internal memory structure should be not that complex.
Okay.
I mean, and
Okay.
Just,
thank
if I understand correctly, you are doing in dialog message the dispatching with dispatcher. Are you dispatching the in dialog message using dispatcher again, not using record routing mechanism? Okay, that's. I guess that won't be possible. Even adding a new one, it's like when you add a new Redis server in the cluster. The keys are redistributed. You have to recalculate on the client side. You cannot simply add a new server and pretend that the state remain the same.
I mean, I think in the end it's a classic high availability clustering issue. Basically, with every server or with every service that you distribute in a cluster, you have this issue. Normally, the hashing algorithm, yeah, you have like these certain buckets. Like if you have four dispatchers, you have 4 buckets, and every call is distributed into one of these buckets. And if you then add a 5th or 6th dispatcher, then of course need to recalculate the algorithm, and the buckets will be different. So in the end, you will have some kind of reloading in the end if you do it by an RPC command. If you do it by restarting, in the end you have it. But normally in dialog routing should be done by the record route and not by a module. I mean.
Okay.
There is some dirty tricks though. You can save the destination selected for a specific URI in a shared hash table that will auto-expire for a while. Look into that first now. And then, oh, you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a workaround, so that's why I was asking that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Next.
Another question over there.
Okay, we have a question.
All right, I have a question. So in North America, one big issue that seems to be plaguing phone systems are robocalls, especially unwanted ones. And I'm sure this is everyone's favorite topic. And I'm interested to hear, even an operator's perspective. But several North American operators are coming out with a framework that actually signs phone calls using basically JSON web tokens embedded in a SIP identity header. And it's part of the Stir and Shaken framework. Yeah. The Stir working group in the IETF and Shaken is the mechanism to kind of appropriate it to become practical. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about development of that or where you see that going.
Well, Daniel, can we cancel the rest of the sessions for today? Because we need a long, hard discussion. The Stir group in the IETF was formed out of pressure by the FCC. The FCC basically said something like, hey, you got to do something technology-wise to stop this, otherwise we'll create really, really bad laws. This happened in the birth of the web as well. I don't know how many of you remembered, but the legal authorities forced the World Wide Web Consortium to put in some filters. And it was very strange from us in Europe because they separated sexual language from nudity and some other values. And you could set the level you wanted in a browser, but you couldn't reverse the filter saying, I only want nude pictures and I only want this language. Which was confusing to many Norwegians, I think. But I don't think any one of you ever touched those filters, right? Never, ever. It's technology made by requirement. I think Stir is going down that route. There are some actors doing things. At the last SIPIT, we did some tests of this technology, which involves building a worldwide PKI, a certificate authority that issues certificates for your number ranges, then you issue certificates for each number, and you can delegate that to the call center who needs to use your number on your behalf. And there will be a chain that will take 5 minutes to validate before each call. No user will ever use that, and no carrier will ever use that. But we have technology proof. I was sitting together with Russ Hosley hacking in ASN1 hex code certificates in order to produce the first certificates for this. And we've discovered that, well, the draft as it was back then just didn't really work. But there is some technology. We haven't got it in Kamailio. I think it's not that hard to add. But like many other technologies that come from this direction and not really from the people who needs to use it, I'm not sure it's going to happen. But when you dive down into a large amount of RFCs that has come out of the Stir working group in the IETF, you'll find a little gem called Passport, which is the carrier of a signed identity that can also carry around some metadata. This is a very interesting, it's a signed JSON web token, and I believe that part will survive coming into the right hands. That part will be crucial for some WebRTC applications that require some security and identity and or authentication tokens being flowing around. So some parts of the technology I believe in. I don't believe that many states can actually enforce implementation of the STIR CA in any phone system. It's way too late. But it's fun with technology.
Right. Something completely different. Why is it that in these sessions, everybody focuses back on voice as the one and only application that you can do with Kamailio? Because Kamailio is much, much, much broader than that. So can I ask the members of the astute panel here very briefly to go over applications that they have built using Kamailio other than voice, starting with you, Ola.
What's your definition of voice? I mean, if there's two, you mean a phone call?
Yeah, real-time media.
So right now I'm working with live radio broadcasts. We have a Kamailio platform in the Swedish radio, which stands for up to 20% of all the radio sent in the air on the net. Up to 20% is SIP calls produced with Kamailio servers. So it goes directly from some kind of SIP device out on the radio network. Also working with door control systems, alarm systems, which is one-way or two-way media streams, but mostly signaling and text messaging in
I was
SIP.
trying to get you onto IoT and MQTT in particular.
Not yet.
Oh,
Not
you
yet.
tease.
There's a
you
day
tease.
tomorrow as well. Anyone else?
But I think Julian had an interesting one, presented also at FOSDEM, some cool stuff. Just don't forget to mention that.
Okay. Yeah, last year I was crazy enough to implement a media module for Kamailio. And everyone was, I knew there wouldn't be so much support. But using Media Streamer 2, I was able to play file, and I was going to do a call bridging module in Kamailio, but because it's for... No, Topos was just good enough for the hour. No, I was using a USC in this case, right? There was a lot of complexity, and it was not architecturally...
So no dispatcher?
Nothing related
Thank
to
God for
dispatcher.
that, yeah.
And then at FOSDEM, I did a signaling module for WebRTC. I mean, it's already supporting WebRTC, but you need to do offer answer from the browser. You need to have a specific protocol to exchange them, right? So I use Kamailio to do a little module like that. But really, the media module was not very
well, it still sounds a bit real-timey media-y. So I'm looking for applications that are not really media. Alex, have you got one?
Yeah, there's a minority but growing viewpoint out there that distributing presence at a large scale is not best accomplished using SIP. And we've done a lot of work in bridging presence into XMPP with Kamailio, with great effect, actually. There's a small but growing number of handset vendors that actually have invested in this point of view as well.
Yeah, and of course, I'm looking at Daniel. I'm trying to get you onto things like messaging, SMS. Remember, Daniel, was it 11 years ago when you actually dropped SIP Simple SMS messaging into TruePhone, and it worked brilliantly?
Yeah, my main work on non-voice was pretty much messaging and notifications. So notification on different situations, somehow related to the voice, but using still SIP, but custom notification to different, more into IoT stuff.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, as we've moved into 4G and IMS, virtually all of the messaging is, well, SIP simple based. So all of a sudden, there's no, apart from the authentication and bits and pieces, there's no reason why you should not be using Kamailio to send SMSs to.
But then probably I need to pass to Carsten because he did the SMS, but he did also other crazy stuff with Kamailio, not doing SIP, like diameter server, charging server, a lot of stuff. Maybe Carsten can add using Kamailio for non-SIP stuff.
Yeah, okay, of course, as you may know, people who know me tend to say I would do anything I can with Kamailio instead of using anything else. So, of course, at the moment we've got various Kamailio servers who just speak diameter. You speak diameter, RabbitMQ, but no zip. All zip messages are dropped and discarded. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out how useful diameter is, because diameter does everything that you can do with SS7 map and a whole load more. So armed with that, you can get up to all kinds of fun and games.
Yeah, something else you could create with Kamailio is a push notification server. For example, if you know what push notifications are for mobile, yeah, what I built was a server that receive via various methods, even HTTP, because Kamailio has a nice, even simple HTTP server embedded, or via SIP, and on the other side, pushing to the notification services via HTTP query.
I kind of follow Karsten here. It's kind of interesting. After spent so many years with Kamailio, I tend to do everything in Kamailio as well. I've done API servers for HTTP in Kamailio. When you start looking at other areas, like James mentioned, IoT and stuff, people are starting to build high-performance messaging servers, but they're missing that little word high. They have low performance. They're stumbling into the same roadblocks as we did 15 years ago. If Daniel looked at the code, he would say, hey, I sold this 12 years ago in Kamailio. I sold this 13 years ago in Kamailio. I sold this. And they're making the same mistakes. Kamailio has a really powerful engine. And if you look at the core, I think we can actually pick out and separate a lot of the zip stuff from the core and make it a protocol engine that will really, really be high performance, because it's written asynchronously now and with the focus of delivering messages. And a lot of IoT is about delivering one message from the sender to one or multiple receivers. And that's exactly what we do. But we have over 15 years of experience of doing that. So I think James' question really puts out, is something we should take seriously as developers and see, what can we do? We have gateways to HTTP, we have gateways to other protocols, but could we do more of that in the core and really scale like crazy? Take over the world. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Okay. So now, because I remember someone won actually a dangerous demo, and I want to warm up Andreas. You did something also crazy at some point with Kamailio and Media Streamer, or what was at one of the Kamailio edition?
Microphone, Andreas.
No, actually not really. I mean, I was just using Kamailio to do zip messaging and using RTP engine on one hand last year, I think, for driving the Google API for voice recognition. And before I was doing actually a client streaming like video files into an app, like using Jitsi to watch TV, for instance, and stuff like that, injecting media kind of like into your phone client. Yeah, but it's a bit kind of like a different thing, in my opinion. But
I remember that you did a demo at some point, playing a video, not having a SIP client, more or less. It was a SIP client? Really? Okay. I say about Kamailio that it's the event I always go to but never attend because I'm involved in the organization. But, okay, so I think we clarify this. Are you happy, James? Let's move to other topics. What you think that we are missing in Kamailio, or where we should put more efforts, not only code, but could be administration. Shall I say documentation? No, okay. So, next question from panelist here, Paolo. Okay.
Thank you. I have a question about the DMQ module. Let's take an example. I have 2 instances using Kamailio and sharing messages using DMQ. So data are synced together. If I create another instance, so the 3rd instance came up and uses also DMQ, is there the possibility to share, to sync the information without using a database to initialize the first information?
Julian is here, the guy. I know that Julian did some work. You both work on it? Okay.
It depends on the module that is using DMQ as a transport. I believe that the location service does do this. I don't believe the dialog module, and I don't think HTable do this.
I know the user log module is sending a sync request, and it will receive the entire user log registrar database.
Only via KDMQ message?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
And one of the improvement I have made last year was to make sure we can send multiple contact per message, because it was quite heavy. There was a transaction storm. If there was delay, there was retransmission, and then, it scales up quite well with grouping. We could add compression, maybe. I'm not sure if it would be valuable, but right now you can have hundreds of thousands of registration, and we could fine-tune the sync, not to sync from all the other nodes. A really simple improvement would be to say, I want to sync from 1 or 2 only. It's good enough. I'm sure you will have a really clean state, because new transactions are also replicated at the same time. So you have duplication, but you need to resolve the clashes when you receive a replication plus a refresh. But these edge conditions are very well handled. This is only about user log. This is where I dig really deep, but I don't know the other.
HTable, by way of clarity, actually does initialize from the bottom, as I understand it. I was mistaken in saying that. So user log does it, HTable does it, but the dialog module does not. And I'm not aware of any other modules that really make extensive use of DMQ as a transport right now.
Presence has some extension. I haven't worked, but okay, we don't have Charles. British guy here, but he did most of this work for DMQ and Presence. I noticed some code in the Presence module for DMQ,
no, that's true.
but I don't know for what extent. And also he did the one for dialogue, if I'm not wrong, and I'm not sure if it's replicating this, but should not be a big addition, because Charles did most of the work with DMQ
well, it does replicate.
And Julian's...
Well, it does replicate. The question is, if a server comes up from nothing, will it discover all the dialogues in their existing profile
It was
key?
mainly about the profile, because people want to see how many active calls you have for a user. So, and replication of the profiles, I did it, but I did a feature which is not that common use, to replicate profile information only, for the purpose of using, this limits active calls. Was not, so it appears like a foreign profile in your instance when the dialog is actually handled on another instance. But then that was an idea a couple of years ago, and then I started to use mainly Redis for this, like limits per user, faster to, because you don't need to replicate the full dialog. In most of the cases, it's just this limit per dialogue, fraud protection and so on, and Redis is very fast, does a good job at spreading information.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you've got the dialogue variables, which can be used to shuttle around some pretty...
Yeah, but for that we added the new feature that, thanks Paolo and Alexander helping to debug that, and also sponsoring that kind of work. If the dialog is not found locally, you can load it from the database with the entire. So this is the other high availability. That node goes down and you want another node to handle the dialog. That's working now with, if it's not a known dialog, it's a function for that, load from DB. So I was talking with Alexander.
Tomorrow I will explain in a slide.
So they have presentation about this. It was a recent addition. So practically, if you don't find the dialog in memory, you can load it from the database. And if you have a replication at the database level, and thanks to Andreas, probably we could use Redis soon for the same kind of purpose. You get variables, you get everything, and you can handle it. The other one was like, you have a distributed platform, all the nodes are up, but you want to see active calls for a user to have limits. So, maybe a call goes here, another call from the same user goes there. So there are two of them are somehow sorted.
With the ID of the transaction, with this
Loading the dialogues from the... Yeah, that issue with the hash ID and the dialog index, yeah, that's how it's not maybe the right design for what we need to do now, but it's how we solve it now with having a different step. I'm looking at finding another solution. The problem is not updating the dialog to use a different unique ID. The problem is there are many modules relying on dialog, like presence dialog info, like CNXCC module. There are a couple of modules. So when you change the unique ID per dialog, you have to update all the other modules. So I need a bit of time to prepare it. So I was even thinking like forking the module just to be sure it's working with the new dialog ID, because the dialog ID can appear also in record route if there is a DID there and so on. So again, the problem will not be changing the dialog module. It's like it spreads to other modules, this basic change. Like virus. Other comments on this? Oh, Armin?
I've got a question about using Kamailio with elastic load balancer, like Amazon or whatever. So I mean, coming back to what James was saying a little bit earlier about Kamailio, you can do so many different things and lots of connections to Kamailio instances. It would be really convenient to be able to go and put a bunch of them behind AWS ELB, and there's nothing preventing you from doing this now except for losing the information about the IP address and the port and information, or that kind of connection metadata. And so, for example, the HA proxy project has a little proxy protocol that gets sent out before the initial request. So I was wondering if anyone's thought about implementing that feature in Kamailio.
More like sort of any cast you look at, or you know, like.
No, it wasn't any cast. This was just when you open a connection, there are AWS ELB settings such that when that service sends your Kamailio instance. Sorry, there are ELB settings such that when you when the ELB instance sends you a new connection, the opening stanza of the connection will have like capital PROXY, proxy, and then a few extra information about the external IP that's actually connecting to your instance. And so this would allow, you know, for sort of seamless replication of several Kamailio instances behind an AWS ELB product.
I'll have to look at it because I'm not familiar with this one, but
okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering if other people had come across this.
I use Kamailio on AWS a bit as well. Their new network load balancer does not use this proxies thing. It just represents as the client's final IP address.
Interesting.
I have never tried that with UDP though, but it does fine with TCP.
Interesting.
I don't know how Amazon does it, but they do.
Do you think we can do it without using the application layer? Because in the transport layer, we're missing information about the sessions. I wonder what can be done without being in the application
what
layer.
I was trying to say, because I pushed some small, I mean, most of the code was there. I just had it to export it. But in the last few weeks, if you check some of my commits, because I did many, you have full flexibility now to set source IP of the message, no matter what it is. So you can set it from the config file to what's in your mind. You have full flexibility to set a local socket. So let's say you can, and actually I'll have a slide tomorrow about what I'm calling transparent proxy. So you get a message, a C message, could be request or reply, and you can send it to another Kamailio without changing all this via or adding route headers, even it's a reply. So practically it's like, okay, I got it, I don't want to deal with it, I'm sending there. And I'll have the slide tomorrow when I have the year in review. So practically it helps you to do a transparent load balancer, but its application level is Kamailio, including with the replies in the way that if the transaction doesn't exist for that reply, you can pass it to another one, another Kamailio, and if it has the transaction, it will do normal processing, but you pass it through a private interface, and then you can set, okay, what's my local socket? Is now the public, because I want to use it for sending out. What's the source IP is not actually the other proxy, it's the information that that proxy transfers to me. And actually, it's going to transfer it through SIP header. So everything is SIP, because I'm not a fan of inventing new protocols. So you have a bit of flexibility, like adding headers to a reply, but not removing the via as would you do normal processing of the reply. So you could still do some changes and then say, okay, send it to that guy. And that guy will set the source IP, will set local socket, can set all this information about network topology, and can process it like I receive it from the user. So this is kind of rather, again, it was only very small function that I had to export because the code was already there. It was just, Ole, want you to say something?
Yeah, I think we have to take a step back, and the teacher in me reacts here, because we shouldn't look at broken protocols and copy what they do. With HTTP, you need to mess around with load balancers, sharing the same IP, and having several workloads behind. In SIP, we did the right thing. We push all the load balancing and the failover to the client using DNS SRV records. So we really don't have to mess around too much with this kind of stuff unless you have broken clients using that old version of IP. What was it? Number 3, 5, 4, version 4, where you had the NAT address translation. And in that case, Daniel's tricks will come in handy. And maybe we should think about what Simon Woodhead talked about a year ago with the software-defined networking. Maybe we should interface to that and bring up VLANs on the fly when we need to add servers and stuff. But really, load balancing and failover should be done by the SIP UA. And on the server side, we should be able to have servers on multiple IPs, add IPs, remove IPs dynamically in DNS. And everything should be hunky-dory. And it works for quite a lot of the SIP UAs out there.
Then maybe other topics, packaging, documentation, other application around Kamailio that you are missing, or modules of Kamailio that you want improvements, or if you don't like how we do releases, you don't like how the font we use on mailing list. Here.
I have one, and it's probably a small one, or maybe I just missed how to do it, but I send a lot of HTTP requests from Kamailio configuration files into a web server and communicate a bit back and forth. And URL encoding of posted content, like in the post message in the current HTTP library, it doesn't work. For instance, the plus sign in a phone number, it doesn't get encoded correctly. So on the receiving web server end, you have to kind of guess if space was maybe a plus and hope that it was, maybe, and stuff like that.
Knows more. So the question about when doing HTTP requests from Kamailio outside, some of the characters are not encoded properly.
You have to use the Kamailio function to...
Yeah, the URI encode, it doesn't encode plus.
Okay, so maybe open a bug on GitHub.
All right, I thought maybe it was because it encoded for another standard than whatever HTTP uses.
No, the Kamailio modules just use CURL as a library. So you are calling CURL, and exactly as you would do in another program, you have the responsibility to correctly encode.
I was just wondering if maybe there was a transform missing to properly URL escape post content. That is possibly maybe.
Let's have a look.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll post an issue. Yeah.
That sounds like an issue if it's not working properly, because I think there is a URL encode or...
URI encode, but I don't think it does the same.
Okay, then it could be a bug. Okay, other question or everything else?
There is, because I'm pretty sure I'm using a couple of deployments, so it must...
Make a dangerous demo. That's great.
Sure. Yep.
Lucky thing we're not using C++.
Okay, yeah, I'm lucky then.
Does the hexa transformation not do the trick for you?
Alex said if using like hex transformation, so you convert it to hexacodes, everything, and then you...
That I have not tried.
Okay. And I think we have...
Probably would, yeah, if I just base 64 encode everything.
Yeah, or base 64 encode everything. Okay. Other questions? Are you happy with Kamailio, everything? Where do you think, like, maybe we miss some tools for allowing more to contribute, not code, because that might be a bit more complex, but also like, I don't know, documentation, testing. We'll have Giacomo presenting like a bare-bone unit testing framework that hopefully will be easy for people to start contributing to. But if it's something that you think it's missing from Kamailio in terms of infrastructure or tools to interact with the community, say like maybe you can run whatever application that will make it easier. We run everything on GitHub. But we have enough, like LOD, one of the sponsors gave us few servers that now are sitting alone there. We hope to use them for more stuff, so we can even give access if you have cool ideas of running something around Kamailio project. We have the infrastructure. We somehow lack human resources.
I got a question.
Yep.
For incidental PRs rather than routine core contributions, Asterisk have a really nice process for code review, this whole Garrett-driven thing they've devised. Have you ever considered adopting something like that? Not because I believe we really suffer from a lot of code quality problems, but as a matter of kind of professionalization of the patch acceptance process, do you think there's any profit in doing that?
Okay, we can think. Well, maybe I can ask Matt if that helped them. Is Jared something that helped Asterisk project a lot?
I think if you are trying to treat any software from as an engineer, like from an engineering process, right? And you want to engineer the software like you engineer anything else. I think code review is an essential part of the process, and good tools that allow you to do that allow you to raise the quality of the code. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen from a mandatory perspective, but at least allows you to give other people the opportunity to help raise that quality. So, you know, I think it helps us. We deal with a lot of code reviews, but it also simplifies the process of, like, if you're working with different branches of code too, some of those tools help with like the cherry picking process and things like that. You don't have to do it manually, you can do it through the tools and whatnot. So it just depends on your requirements and how you want to treat that process.
I think Git has.
I think we discussed this when we introduced the GitHub thing, and we said that GitHub has this review thing. Now it's improved because now you can say, hey, I want you to review this, and you will not allow anyone to merge it. So I think for us, GitHub is good enough because it's open. Everyone can say, hey, you miss a semicolon here or whatever. And actually now that we have the CI integration that actually builds the thing, it's just maybe the next step will be run several tests with the same pull request, but I think Gary doesn't give us more.
I don't have any experience. It's why I pass it to Matt to see, because I never used Gerrit myself in any of the projects. So
yeah, well,
yeah.
Okay, Henning.
I think I'd like to add that I think we should improve our processes first before we think about adding more tools, because as you mentioned, the GitHub infrastructure is there, and I also use it like for some patches, like the TCP extension for these hardware crypto modules. I use this to comment on the patches, which work quite okay. But first, we really need to think about like what would be the appropriate processes for a proper developer review of a patch. Like at the moment, it's like more decided by a case-by-case basis. Like it's a big complicated thing, and like a important module like TLS, or some patches that touches more different modules. Then we will do a formal review. But if it's like a smaller patch, then it's more or less just a quick review, and then apply it more or less to the master branch at least, and then get some testing, and then maybe more tested in the preparation, the release.
Yeah, well,
and the comparison to Asterisk is really hard, because Asterisk is a much more centralized project. We are much more distributed. We have our own modules, and we help others with modules. I think the pull request works fairly well. Maybe for the core, but our code review for the core is standing over there in the green shirt. The problem I had with the code reviews in Asterisk was that were some central committers asked me to do things that wasn't involved in my piece of the code and didn't want to accept until all these additional codes that had no extra functionality that we needed was done, and no one was going to pay that bill. So a lot of code was blocked that way. And that's not a good use of code reviews. I hope that that part is gone away because that person moved away from Asterisk.
Yeah.
But that's a problem with the code reviews when people start asking for tens of other features that wasn't involved. I said, well, that's fine. Anyone can do those 10 features, but that wasn't part of my code. I want my code committed.
Well, sometimes
so you have to have some rules and some process around it.
Yeah, as Henning said, the process is good because even now we require, if you break some core API, you kind of need to fix the other modules. We have like the rule, you should not break master on compilation at least. If it's crashing and so on, we'll test it a bit later, but don't break it on compilation. So changing API function, it's also for us. For me, because it's open source, again, it's community, I can disclose my review rule. If it's something that I use, I really look at it. If not, and looks good at the first sight, then I say, okay, you can merge it. Because we have over 200 modules, I don't use many of them, and I don't say it. If it's like IMS, I ping Carsten NG voice, but there are many modules like Orphan, and if someone jumps like few days ago was someone working with DB virtual DB Perl with DB, which I thought we should remove it. It was like not touch it for 10 years, more or less 8 years, and I was saying maybe for the next release I will propose a couple of more modules for getting away. And he's coming, oh, this is crashing. Okay, well, I knew somehow it's crashing because nobody touched it, but somehow he wants to maintain it now, which is fine. I did a bit of review. I updated for the database API because I was familiar, but I never said that, okay, I'm going to maintain or really test it if it's no longer crashing. So reviewing, it's mainly based on the interest. Okay, Sandro, because we have a bit time.
Yeah, I noticed that there is this new security group within Kamailio. It involves Henning and Victor and so on. I was wondering what sort of tasks have you done, and what do you plan to do? What's your job?
Okay, maybe I'll take it a bit at the beginning and pass it to Henning because he's gonna. So this is like work in progress. Maybe I'll disclose more tomorrow, but we need to define some procedure. There is a so-called Kamailio admin group, and we still have to define, we discussed some options, but it's not yet out there. Most of the people in front are in that group. Maybe Henning wants to add, but we don't have something to present right now, but we're working on that. Henning?
I mean, I think as you mentioned, I mean, of course, one bottleneck that we're facing, not only from a code review perspective, but also from an administrative point of view, is Daniel is doing a lot of work in these areas as well. So we started in different areas like release management, for example, to trying to spread the word to to different people, automating the process more, having a better documentation that other people can take over the work of doing a maintenance release, for example, that not everything needs to be done from Daniel. Yeah, as Daniel mentioned, also for the security, sub group. Yeah, it's still work in progress. I did some research there, as I mentioned earlier. I will present tomorrow, but it's not that we're having like a full-fledged security roadmap strategy whatsoever. In the past, it was like maybe once a year we had this discussion. Okay, Ollie, you also brought this up. We should work on that. We could do a bit better there. We could better there, definitely. But for now, the pain was not that big, I would say. Like, I mean, you did the research as well in Kamailio, and yeah, we did together this release with the announcement, etc. And this worked quite well. And think we should extend these processes like other people or other projects are doing, like release, formalized security announcement process, etc. And yeah, I think it will happen we are working on that. But at the moment, we are looking more to the requirements that's from the community. And in the past, it was not that like every week somebody complained on the mailing list. I mean, we are like more like a specialized project. It's not like we are not Apache or whatever. Yeah.
So yeah, this admin group is trying to get the active community members, because we have the management group which should take care only on delicate situation. It's a conflict and someone needs to decide left or right, because you cannot fight forever, right? So this is more like a council advisor. And then the admin group that we formed a few months ago is from the active community that wants to spend time, and some of them security, Victor packaging and releases, and we define a couple of subgroups. But at least from my point of view, the year starts after Kamailio World and ends, because the period before is the busy one and we don't do much. We have the mailing list, we discuss on some chatting system from time to time, but after the Kamailio World, of course, 1-2 weeks to rest. But we hope to get the process out. The priorities would be the releases, and the security are the top priority, because to formalize it and have a clear process. If someone needs to report a security issue, how to deal with, where to go, what are the people that could get the information. So that's it. So I think maybe we are already over, if I'm not wrong. If someone wants to have like a final remark or a final question, otherwise we have some drinks and snacks waiting for us before preparing for lightning sessions and the last group of tutorials. Otherwise, thank you everyone for the questions. And again, we are